Hi, I'm Moons. Welcome to my channel. Let's talk about Burn the Witch. Burn the Witch is a short manga series written and illustrated by Kubo Tite. He is best known for having the same birthday as me and for being the creator of one of the big three of Shonen Jump, Bleach. You all know Bleach well enough, right? So I don't want to spend too much time on it. Let me just say that I think it has some flaws that bother me, but I am a fan anyway. To me, Bleach did more right than wrong, and I'll leave it at that. Now as for Burn the Witch, it first drew its breath as a one-shot in Weekly Shonen Jump in July 2018, and then it got a short 4-chapter run from August to September 2020. This run ended with the announcement of a second season for the series, whatever that means. If it's more continuation for the story, then I am all in. But for now, let's focus on what we do have. And what we do have is a really cool manga and an anime adaptation that I instantly fell in love with. As soon as I finished the anime, I rushed over to YouTube to comb through all the interesting Burn the Witch videos that I could find. Sadly, most of what I found were just reviews of the manga or the OVA, and that's about it. While I really enjoyed these videos and most of the YouTubers did give their thoughts on stuff and theorize about other stuff, I was left feeling like there was no one taking the time to talk about what I loved most about the series. So in this video, I'm taking it upon myself to do just that. This is not a review of the manga series or the anime. Instead, I'm gonna be turning an analytical eye on what I liked the most about the story. World building. It's world building. I loved the world building of Burn the Witch. Let's talk about it. When I heard that Kubo Tite was stepping back into the manga game, I had no idea what to expect. His previous series Bleach was really interesting, a bit darker, and at least felt a bit more mature than what I had come to expect from Shonen Jump at the time. I watched the anime of Burn the Witch before reading the manga, but even then, the thing that grabbed me and wouldn't let me go is the world building. I loved it so much that I decided to make a video gushing about it. And here we are, I guess. With Burn the Witch, Kubo created a world that combined the urban fantasy concept of mirrored cities with magical girls, sort of, and supernatural office politics. There's a lot going on in this story despite its short length. First of all, I am a big fan of urban fantasy. Seeing fantastical elements like dragons and magic existing alongside mundane things like radio towers and trains really does it for me. You know what I mean? That scene from Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, where they visit a fairy market under Brooklyn Bridge, was the shit to me. I love that sort of blending of genres or styles. The world of Burn the Witch does this to a good degree as well. They have magic, yeah, but they also have smartphones. They drink coffee from vending machines but ride around on living dragon broom mount thingies. It's pretty cool. And that scene where Noelle administers like a weird licking test to a civilian who might have come in contact with a dragon, I love it so much. I love how the response of something fantastical like coming in contact with a dragon is treated with cold surgical precision. Instead of it being a good thing or like an amazing event, the poor guy is made to do what feels like a breathalyzer test before he's let go. And we learn that the punishment for coming into contact with a dragon is 100 years in prison. Or death. As harsh as that is, I think it sets the tone for the world we're in and how dragons are viewed as well. Sure, they're useful and helpful, but they're also dangerous. And if you mess around with them, you will suffer harsh consequences for it. It makes me wonder if these punishments are how the relatively peaceful existence within reversed London is maintained, despite dragons being common here. Another thing that really made me perk up and get curious was the mention of the Dragon Contact Prohibition Law of 1609. Why the date? What happened in 1609? Was being near dragons just permitted before then? So many questions. As I watched on, the world Kubo made continued to wow me with its details and throw me into rabbit hole after rabbit hole of theory and speculation, and bit by bit, I fell in love with it. Now, I'm not gonna come out here and claim that it is the greatest feat of world building I've ever seen or something like that. They've been better, even in other manga. But what we do get is not only interesting, but really well thought out, and I think it deserves more celebrating. As Masashi Kishimoto and J.K. Rowling's current careers as of this writing prove, sometimes it's not easy for the creator of a mega successful franchise to try something new. So to see Kubo Tite, the creator of Bleach, come out with something new and absolutely knock it out of the park was immensely satisfying, especially since the wider anime and manga community as a whole seems to have lost a lot of respect for his former series. It got to the point where I wondered if Kubo himself had been written off and his achievements had been forgotten. Then we got this manga and its anime adaptation. It showed me that only 2 years after the ending of one of the so-called big three that defined Shonen Jump for an era, Kubo could still make creative magic. I fell in love with his new world hook, line, and sinker. I loved it so much that I started writing a script for this video the very day I watched the anime. This is a lovingly crafted magical world and I cannot wait to explore it again when Kubo brings us back to it once more. For now, let me get excited and puzzled over what we did get. This'll be fun, trust me. Let me take a little time to gush over the creative goldmine that is Reverse London itself. First of all, the name is cool as heck. It reminds me of London Below from Neil Gaiman's novel Neverwhere. I'm not sure whether this is an inspiration for the concept or if there are a lot of other beneath this city is another city type of stories. Either way, I fell completely in love with it. In the manga, we see Noelle enter Reverse London through a phone booth in a way that almost calls back to goofy spy films. This is apparently a phone gate. We also see Nini enter it using a coin to create some sort of portal on the cobblestone. Once we're in Reverse London, we're given interesting bits and pieces to consider. The most interesting thing about Reverse London to me is how there seems to be an almost one-to-one reflection of major buildings and landmarks of Front London in Reverse London. This reflection goes as far as the damage being sustained by buildings in Reverse London being mirrored by its Front London counterpart, which is a strange revelation to say the least. What's most interesting is that no character comments on whether the, reverse is true. Would damaging Front London cause identical damage to Reverse London? This is one of the aspects of the location that could seriously deepen our understanding about what it is and how it works. Moving on, one major difference between the two Londons, other than the presence of dragons, seem to be large swaths of farmland and nature present in Reverse London. Front London seems to have a lot more urban areas in this space. This strikes to me as really odd. If the cities are almost identical, why does this difference exist? I'd love to speculate more about this, but I'll leave that for later in the video. For now, let's continue discussing other aspects of the city. One of my favorite parts of the first episode of Burn the Witch occurs when the dragon attacks Balgo. The witches immediately spring into action in a way that reveals a lot about the world they live in. For instance, the first step when confronting a hostile dragon seems to be putting up barrier tape. This crime scene do not cross looking yellow tape is presumably magical and is likely deployed to contain the dragon. To me, this shows that there are specific procedures to follow in case of a dragon attack. The fact that the procedures are different when a dark dragon shows up also makes me wonder if these light dragons are a lot more dangerous than we might think. And then the dragon goes lights out. I really like the sequence. It feels like we're seeing a low-scale disaster movie type story. Alarms ringing all over town, a whole street is blocked off, metal bars pop up to protect buildings, and people are asked to go into shelters. And the BBC, or is that the reverse BBC, starts making announcements. This scene reminds me of Pacific Rim a lot. In that movie, citizens of Hong Kong have procedures they can follow in the event of a kaiju attack, and it says a lot about the world and the reality it faces. So to see that when Reverse London is faced with disaster, the city and its people come alive and know what to do is just awesome. It's a welcome change from shocked and terrified bystanders running around and getting hurt. Something that I find really amusing about Reverse London is how gothic the architecture is. Pictures of London in our world look to be a lot more modern and skyscrapery than this beautiful city. Personally, I don't really need London to be picture perfect. I think this magical version of it benefits from the gothic architecture. It is a hell of a tone setter and I approve. But what is a city without people though? Luckily, Reverse London is brimming with folks of all types. The city seems to have some sort of civilian population who do various jobs you might expect in our world. They even have a tabloid magazine in Reverse London. I am super interested in learning more about the people of Reverse London, how they came to live there, where they're originally from, why they live there, how they stay safe from dragons, and so much more. The only thing we know so far is that some people like Noelle and Nini found their way to Reverse London presumably after their magic awakened. I wonder if it's like a Harry Potter Hagrid, you're a wizard type situation. Speaking of Hagrid, let's talk about dragons. Let me just start by saying that I love Kubo's take on dragons in Burn the Witch. Having come from The Hobbit, Game of Thrones, and Dungeons & Dragons, I'm really used to thinking of dragons as some sort of large reptilian beasts. Dinosaurs that breathe fire, basically. Seeing Kubo take the world and greatly expand what it could be blew my mind. Maybe I need to read more dragon stories. Feel free to drop some non-traditional dragon tales I can check out in the comments below. Thanks a lot. I love how the word dragon is a classification for a certain type of creature rather than a name for a specific type of creature. It lets Kubo draw any type of fantasy creature he can come up with and just call it a dragon. Love it! Screw the status quo. Hashtag Weirder Dragons 2021. In this part of the video, I'm gonna go over some of the basic lore and world building Burn the Witch presented us about dragons and give my thoughts on them. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here, so let's start at the top. In the one-shot, we're told that dragons are neither mythical creatures nor animals. We're also told that 72% of all deaths in London are dragon-related. It has apparently been this way since long ago. Also, we're told that it has been 96 years since a dark dragon appeared within the city. First of all, what the fuck? That is a ridiculously high percentage. How dangerous are these creatures anyway? Secondly, how can both of those things be true? How can there not have been a dark dragon in the city for 96 years and yet 72% of all deaths in London are dragon related? Are the light dragons causing all these deaths? Are they really that dangerous? I thought they were supposed to be like cute and helpful. Just how many people are exposed to dragons? Is being a dragon-clad a really common thing? Speaking of which, let's talk about the Dragonclad, starting with what we know. So far, we don't know a lot about the Dragonclad other than the fact that they attract dragons to them by having a delicious scent, and that the Dragonclads themselves have no special ability to sense dragons. One of the most interesting things about dragons and Dragonclad to me is how they're connected. When humans come into contact with dragons, they begin accumulating dragotoxin and become dragonclad. This makes them attractive to more dragons who would presumably come near them and spread dragotoxin to even more people, thus exacerbating the problem. To me, this paints the picture of this connection being more of an animal behavior or a natural thing, rather than some sort of evil creature. I know that dragons aren't supposed to be animals, but I'm speaking in relative terms here. Anyway, putting speculation aside, I also want to shine a spotlight on some of the cute little dragons we see in the manga. The anime skipped out on the exposition and world building that introduces them, relegating them to a pretty chill and cute ending song. But honestly, considering how much it helped the pacing of the story, I'm not too salty about it. I can still go back and read the manga after all. Speaking of the manga, Chapter 2 has a scene early on where we see Noelle at home. She has several light dragons, that's dragons that are nice and cute and not murderous and creepy, living with her at home. This, paired with the exposition Kubo offers us, gives us a lot to chew on. According to the manga, the majority of the light dragons serve the residents in Reverse London in one way or the other. Is this where the 72% of deaths thing comes from? Common household accidents? Okay, I'll shut up about it. Anyway, we're shown a dragon that boosts radio waves, which is an interesting choice of creature to create, to say the least. Another interesting and bizarre design is this thing that is apparently used to clean water? We are also shown dragons that are seemingly plant pots. They have a serious Studio Ghibli vibe to them, and speaking of Ghibli, there is also a dragon that is a bus. It has wings and presumably flies, and who can forget the adorable broom buggies that seem to carry our protagonist around in so many scenes. The idea of mixing the broomsticks witches are known for with dragon mounts is a particularly inspired choice, I think. I wonder if there's a difference between broom buggies like Nini's Marshall and dragon mounts like Rickenbacker. Do broom buggies grow into bigger dragon mounts, or are they replaced? So far, broom buggies seem to be the most personalized part of the witch's arsenal. They give me slight Zanpakuto vibes, even though they're not weapons per se. Moving on, Kubo's design for the Bud Buck is absolutely gorgeous. The scenes we see of the dragon in the anime are quite pretty, and I really liked watching the great design in motion. The page where Kubo reveals a ton of dragons that the residents of Reverse London use as resources is just brimming with creative designs. I find the names kinda cute too. Just look at this ridiculousness. Woolly Wally, Blue Appetite, Meatball. My guy really went and named a lump of walking meat bred for harvesting Meatball. Also, does this mean that normal humans can eat dragons without accumulating dragotoxin? That's a bit strange, isn't it? And speaking of strange, take a look at this grotesquerie. This is a disguiser, a dragon that can possess and reanimate a corpse, and surprise surprise, I love this design too. I'm a huge fan of the way the snout unravels into a gaping maw filled with a row of teeth. I'm also a huge fan of its creepy eyes. I think the black and white nature of manga as a medium really helps to create a stark contrast here, making the design even more unsettling. The wings are pretty cool too, and I love how they look like they are ripped skin. Creepy as hell, and I am absolutely here for it. Anyway, then there's the topic of dark dragons. In the manga and anime, it is revealed that dark dragons are dragons that come near humans and absorb negative emotions. We are told that the act of a dragon going dark is called going lights out, which is a pretty awesome term if I do say so myself. Dark dragons apparently come in all shapes and sizes, which reminds me a lot of Hollows if I'm being honest with you. We get to see part of a fight against one in the story, and we're told that Reverse London has been dark dragon free for 96 years. Despite this, Kubo chooses to cut away from the climax of the moment to focus on the top of horns. This implies to me that dealing with dark dragons is not always such an important or even dangerous task. If low-level Wingbind members like Nini and Noelle can handle a dark dragon without the top of horns even batting an eye, how bad could it be? It almost looked like Bruno was the only one who was pissed about this, and I'm honestly not sure if he was pissed because the streak was broken. The rest seemed really uninterested in the attack for some reason. Heck, Saka, Rin, whoever they are, didn't even bother to show up. But the story goes on to show that not every dragon is as easy to handle as the one that Nini and Noelle fought. Some dragons are extremely dangerous. Some dragons are designated wicked. Let's talk about the Martians. One of the big reveals that comes towards the end of the manga and the anime is the existence of Martians. Martians are apparently these fairy tale-like dragons whose power and destructive capability are shown to be far above the average dragon. They are also apparently the progenitors or the ancestors of dark dragons. This might be why they're permanently authorized for elimination by Wingbind and are designated as wicked dragons, Jaryu, and humanity's hypothetical enemy. Doesn't that sound cool as hell? Speaking of cool, I've always thought that Kubo was very good at revealing a group of characters at once, especially villains. The reveal of the Gote 13 had teenage me shaking in excitement and hype. The reveal of the Espada? Same deal. The man has mastered the art of revealing a group of characters and building excitement. Kubo injects us with the same type of hype and wild speculation as he reveals the Martians here. There are apparently 7 Martians, which might have been reduced to 6 as of chapter 4 and episode 3 respectively. They are Snow White, Red Dress, Golden Axe, Bubbles, Sugar House, Band of Animals, and Cinderella. They're all named after famous fairy tales, and we'll get into that a bit. For now, I love how Kubo didn't give the Martians a number ranking based on strength. Maybe this is a bit of a hot take, but I think that sometimes shonen fans can get just a little lost in the weeds about who can beat whom. I think that sometimes it's nice to just appreciate good character design or fun world building without worrying about shit like whether Yumichika can beat Aroniero. Kubo has already done plenty of ranked or hierarchical groups of enemies like the Espada, for instance. Even the Gote 13 has elements of this. So I'm thrilled to see him ditch that idea and try something new. He seems to have just made a random bunch of cool as fuck monsters. Who knows which one is stronger? Does it even matter? If Cinderella is anything to go by, each one of them might have their own way of causing widespread destruction and chaos. The scene where Cinderella's Star Ash ability is revealed is awesome in the manga, but the anime elevated it to another level. My jaw dropped when I saw how many buildings got engulfed in light, as Noelle said. There is no way that just didn't cause hundreds of deaths. Heck, since Reverse London got hit, Front London would take damage too. Who knows how many people got hurt then? And in their case, how terrifying would it be that they would just be living their normal lives when the city just explodes around them for seemingly no reason? That's terrifying. The appearance of the Martian Cinderella does a lot towards building hype for the rest of them too. Seeing how powerful and unique just one of them is fills me with excitement over how awesome the others would be. Some of the Martians have very obvious connections to fairy tales. I was able to pick up on the source of the names like Cinderella, Snow White, Sugar House, the stories of Cinderella, Snow White, and Hansel and Gretel, of course. But some of them are a little harder to me to pick up on, and for some reason, I didn't quite catch the drawings of the fairy tales behind the names. I was just caught up in the names and the information itself at the time. But in the beginning, I thought that red dress was referring to Rose Red, the little-known sister of Snow White, but nah, it's Red Riding Hood. And then there's Bubbles. When I heard the name Bubbles, the first thing I immediately associated with it was that scene in Dumbo where that elephant gets drunk off his ass. But it turns out that is actually a reference to The Little Mermaid, and the original one at that, the much darker one. And Kubo decided to call this dragon Bubbles? Golden Axe was a funny one for me. The first thing I thought of when I heard this name was this really old sprite-based side-scrolling beat-em-up game with a fantasy theme. I used to play it as a kid, and I used to think it was the shit. Anyway, turns out that Golden Axe is not a reference to an old video game, but instead a reference to an Aesop's fable called The Honest Woodsman. This fable even has a version which comes from ancient Greece and stars the Greek god Hermes, so this might be one of the oldest tales here. And then there's Band of Animals, which left me scratching my head for days. Turns out that it's a reference to a story called The Town Musicians of Bremen, an old German fairy tale about a rooster, a dog, a cat, and a donkey who basically run away from a farm to start a band, among other things. How this could be a dragon is anyone's guess. Since Kubo used the German word Martian while classifying these dragons, I think that we're more likely to see inspiration drawn from Grimm fairy tales or the older, darker tellings of these stories rather than the more kid-friendly Disney adaptations. With threats like these, Reverse London is gonna need powerful protectors. Luckily, it has those in spades. Or should I say on brooms? Let's talk about Wingbind. Wingbind, also known as the West Branch of Soul Society, is an organization created to conserve and control the dragon population of Reverse London. It sort of resembles the Gote 13 of Bleach in some ways, but seems quite different in others. The first big difference I noticed was how Wingbind's different divisions were all specialized. In the manga, we get a little name card which hints at what each division does. I might be wrong about this, so feel free to correct me, but in the case of the Gote 13, it doesn't seem like every division is specialized. Sure, we have the 12th being the scientists and the 4th being the healers, but what about the others? What do they do? Why have 13 squads if more than half of them do nothing but purify hollows? Another difference I noticed about Wingbind and Soul Society is the position both organizations occupy in the world they're in. The Gote 13 are basically the army of the government that is Central 46. They enforce laws, keep the peace, and purify hollows, and most importantly, they act with legal authority. There's a certain police force vibe to them. To me, at least. On the other hand, Wingbind seems to be a very different beast altogether. When the witches in Balgo go looking for an illegally reared dragon, they hear an explosion. Nini says that she doesn't want to get involved because if it's terrorists, it's for the cops to take care of. First off, I guess that means Reverse London has cops? Reverse cops? Whatever. I think that this also implies that Wingbind is just one of the many organizations with legal authority. I think that it also implies that this legal authority is confined to dragons. It sounds like dealing with non-dragon crises is not something they have to do. Wingbind has the authority to make civilians lick a device on command. But that's something that involves dragons and public safety. So maybe they get to do it because they're given the authority to, and maybe that authority is a fragile thing. One of the moments that really stood out to me during my initial viewing of Burn the Witch was how much effort the Top of Horns put into eliminating Balgo. In his introduction, Bruno Bangknife reveals that the Top of Horns cooked up a whole ass scheme where they gave Balgo a mantle to make him identifiable. They also set up an elaborate cover story blaming Balgo for the attack on the tabloid building, going as far as to pull in Macy from Front London. This was always weird to me. Why do this? Why go through all this trouble of making a cover story? Who were they trying to fool? The answer that I came to is the public, and possibly the real governing body of Reverse London. The Reverse Parliament? The Reverse Queen? God, that sounds like a chess move. Alright, I'll stop now. Anyway, based on what the anime and manga had to offer, I think that Wingbind is just one of the many organizations that work for or under some sort of governing body. I think that they have a very specific jurisdiction, which is all things dragon related. I also think that how the public and perhaps this hypothetical governing body sees them is very important to them, perhaps implying that their authority comes from trust, and if this trust is ever broken, perhaps Wingbind itself will be in a bind. Another interesting aspect to this organization is seen in how Bangknife recruited Macy and used her in a plot to get to Balgo. This seems super shady and I don't think it was done above board. And looking at how the situation was resolved, it doesn't appear as though Bangknife will suffer any consequences for it. I'm not even sure if this is seen as a bad thing to do within the Top of Horns. Despite Wingbind seeming like a cheery and quirky bureaucracy, it is swiftly revealed to have layers of secrets and tension within. It doesn't even look like they're clearly the good guys in some aspects. Balgo had been a dragonclad for barely a month when the Top of Horns decided to end his life. And if the dialogue is anything to go by, they've been debating whether or not to kill him this entire month. Leaving the mysteries of the place aside, I also think that the aesthetics are awesome. Kubo is an awesome character designer and he is doing excellent work in this series. All the members of Wingbind look awesome. Their various witch kits are eye-catching and they give us a lot to appreciate and theorize about. I'm also a huge fan of broom buggies and dragon mounts. I love that they are living things that the witch or the wizard has to interact with. Overall, Kubo has done an excellent job with Wingbind. I really like it as an organization and I am itching to learn more about all the things that they do. But when it comes to Wingbind, the one thing I want to learn about more than any other thing is the group known as Top of Horns. There's a lot to these guys, so let's start at the top. No pun intended. The highest known authority in Wingbind seems to be the Top of Horns. The way they're portrayed makes them seem like the captains of the Gotei 13. Kubo is known for his awesome character designs. I've read that he likes to design the characters first and then give them personalities and names. He is especially good at creating and revealing groups of characters at once. The reveal of the Top of Horns is done in typical Kubo fashion. It gives us quick snapshots of who they are and hints at what they might be like through their actions, expressions, and even some of the typography he used to write each person's name. One look at Wolfgang/Haut's name tells you a lot about him. This is probably the Yamaji analog of Wingbind, the strict one, the pragmatic one, and dare I say the old-fashioned one? Out of all the designs here, my favorites are Bruno Bangknife and Sullivan Square. Bruno has a really Grimjaw-like vibe to him, if you know what I mean. He gives off that ready-to-pick-a-fight big dick energy that Grimjaw used to have, and it would seem that Kubo really likes that archetype and I am here for it. Sullivan Square, on the other hand, just looks really, really cool. That's it. That's the whole tweet. Hit send. From the moment I saw her, I was drawn to her based on how calm and collected she seemed. I wanted to know what her dragon mount was like, or what her powers were. The fact that she is the head of the Sabers, which is the division that Nini wants to get into so badly, only makes her cooler in my eyes. Also, a special shout out goes to Trombone Takian for just being so cute. Look at him with his bushy beard, he's like a tiny worried grandpa. Anyway, one of the things that I really liked about the Top of Horns is the short description that came with each one of them. It lets us know what divisions they were heads of, which also meant that we got to learn how many divisions existed in Wingbind and what they were. The one that we know the most about are the Pipers. Now that I think about it, the name might come from the fairy tale Pied Piper, but that's just speculation, so let's move on. The Pipers oversee domestication and harvesting resources from dragons. They also capture any problematic dragons. Also, they're represented by the zodiac symbol of Aries for some reason. I'm not sure what the significance of this is, but I guess we'll see. Maybe Kubo is hinting that these guys are like dragon shepherds or something. The Pipers also wear a mantle with this dope as hell pattern on it, and I love it. I honestly want one. Next, I'll talk about the Sabers. They're led by Sullivan Square and seem to be a battle division. Their role is to patrol the streets of London and protect its citizens from dragons. They're represented by the symbol of Scorpio. I find it interesting that actively seeking combat like this is relegated to one division. It's quite different from Bleach, where there are many divisions which seemingly don't have specializations and can do the work any other divisions can do, which is fighting hollows. The Inks are next. Led by the charismatic and hot-headed Bruno Bangknife, their specialization seems to be the extermination of dark dragons. But considering that there hasn't been a dark dragon sighting in Reverse London in 96 years, they've either done a great job or are totally slacking off. They're represented by Taurus. What makes them really stand out to me is how Bruno used his magic. He used spray paints to create magical circles in the air and summoned what looked like literal demons or eldritch horrors. What an amazing concept. The idea of forming ritual circles with spray paint is just peak urban fantasy for me. And because they're called the Inks, I'm kind of wondering whether they'll just be different people who use different artistic mediums to cast their spells. Like maybe there'd be a painter or like, I don't know, a sketch artist. I'm not really sure. You can speculate, I guess. We don't know a lot about the rest of them, so let me just blaze through them real quick. The anthems are led by Roy B. Dipper and seem to be an incantation squad. Maybe this is similar to the Kiddo Corps of the Gote 13. They're represented by Capricorn. The Sacreds or the Liturgy Corps are next, led by... God damn it, Kubo. Kantin Maliv. We don't know a lot about them, but liturgy is a word that I might be mispronouncing, but it sort of means the customs of public worship or something like that. So maybe they're like healers or clerics. They're represented by Aquarius, which kinda implies that as well. The Patchworks division is next, and it is led by the elusive Saka Rin. They're absent from the meeting, so we have no idea what they look like, but if the Patchwork name is anything to go by, I'm expecting a disheveled appearance like an Urahara or an unsettling appearance like a Mayuri. And as for what the Patchworks do, apparently they cut up and dissect dead dragons, which is... whew, okay. Next up is Billionaires, represented by Harry Shake. They are apparently the accounting corps and are represented by Leo for some reason. Okay. Last but certainly not least is the creepily named Gallows division led by Wolfgang/Haut. Haut? I don't really know. The Japanese name translates to something like Personal Affairs Divine Punishment Squad, which just screams internal affairs to me. So I find it rather interesting that they're represented by Libra, the scales. We don't get a lot of information about these characters or the divisions they represent, but Kubo gave them distinctive looks and used fonts that offer some kind of hint of what they were like as people. I also like how evocative and cool sounding the names of the divisions are. It's got that really good mouthfeel, you know what I'm saying? The Sabers feels good to say, it just feels good. What we saw of Bruno also gave us some idea of what to expect in terms of power level, though the involvement of Billy kind of throws a wrench into this sort of thing a bit. Still, it was an impressive display on Bruno's part, and if they weren't dealing with a Martian, who knows what might have happened. One thing I want to mention about the Top of Horns is something Bruno said that really puzzled me. He said that he wanted to kill Cinderella for the achievement points, for the clout, basically. But why does he want them? He's in the Top of Horns. He's literally the director of an entire division of witches and wizards. So why would he want achievement points? Is it bragging rights? Do you need to keep, earning more to stay competitive? I don't get it. I thought that the points for how people were recognized and moved around in the structure of the organization, but Bruno's desire to get more makes me wonder what exactly they're for. Money, I understand. This, not so much. All this talk about the Top of Horns has me missing the Gote 13 and Bleach. Luckily, Burn the Witch does tie into Bleach somewhat, so that gives me a great excuse to talk about Bleach again. Burn the Witch cements its connection to Bleach at the end of the one-shot and in episode 3 of the anime. Kubo, cheeky bastard that he is, drops a small bombshell and just ends it there. Classic Kubo. The one-shot and the OVA ended with the reveal that Wingbind is also the West Branch of Soul Society. But after the initial shock wore off, I ended up thinking more about the Bleach cosmology and trying to figure out where Wingbind, Dragons, and Reverse London fit into it. Although I don't have concrete answers yet, I thought it would be really fun to speculate a little and see what you all think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of what I'm about to discuss. To my knowledge, the universe of Bleach has 3 main worlds. The first one is the human world, where humans like Ichigo and you and me live. And then there's the Soul Society, where Shinigami and other non-wicked souls of humans live, I guess. And then there's Hell, which, as of the recent Bleach one-shot, is a whole can of worms that we don't have time to get into today. Anyway, in addition to these 3 worlds, there's Hueco Mundo, dimension which appears to be like a smallish dimension or a pocket world between Soul Society and the human world. So where does Reverse London and Front London fit into all of this? Is Reverse London in the Soul Society world? Is it another small dimension or pocket world like Hueco Mundo? Is Reverse London just one city in a much larger reverse world? Is that the same world as Soul Society? Who can say? The best bit of evidence we get for a wider reverse world comes from Nini commenting on how dragons are apparently killed indiscriminately over in Japan. Does that mean that dragon killing is among the duties of the Gote 13? Again, who can say? For now, I would like to float my theory for what Reverse London might be within the confines of the Bleach cosmology. I don't know if this theory has been discussed before, so I'm not gonna claim ownership for it, but let's just get into it anyway. While researching theories on Reverse London, I realized that there was one other instance of two versions of a city existing in two dimensions at the same time in the story of Bleach. Remember fake Karakura Town? During the fake Karakura Town portion of the story of Bleach, it is revealed that the Shinigami had sent the real Karakura Town into the Soul Society world and replaced it with a fake one for them to let loose and fight Aizen in. This fake one was built by the 12th Division, if I recall. In Burn the Witch, we learn that damage done to Reverse London is reflected upon Front London. We don't get any mention of whether the opposite holds true. So here's my theory. What if Reverse London is the original London from the human world transported into the Soul Society world and replaced with a fake London, which in this case is called Front London. Front London. Isn't that an interesting name? Maybe it's just Kubo subtly hinting that this London is a front for the real London. What do you all think? Does that sound plausible to you? Or am I reading too much into this? Another interesting thing to think about is where the people living in Reverse London came from. To my understanding, humans with high magical power, or spiritual pressure, I guess, are taken to Reverse London. Some of them, like Noel and Nini, have ongoing lives in Front London. So did Balgo and Macy before they became Dragonclad, I think. Doesn't this imply that Reverse London is just full of regular humans with spiritual power instead of souls of the dead or the Shinigami? If so, isn't it interesting that these regular humans are entrusted with running the entire western branch of Soul Society and whatever that entails, when Ichigo had to basically fight all of Soul Society before he was accepted as a substitute Shinigami? Not sure if this means anything, but something to think about. Next thing I want to bring up is dragons. What even are they in the context of the Bleach universe? Are they a creature that has always lived in the universe and we never knew about them because the focus was never on them? Are they the hollows of animals? Or are they simply spirits of animals and dark dragons are when they go hollow? What does that make Martians then? The Vastolords of dragons? Personally, I'm more inclined to believe that dragons are either a supernatural species that has always existed or that they're the souls of animals. And then there's the whole using dragons to harvest resources thing. Why do the people of Reverse London do this? We can also infer from Nini's words that the people of Japan do not do this. Why not? What if it's because the East branch of Soul Society is made up of souls and Shinigami who don't need physical resources? We've seen people in Soul Society eat and drink. We've seen them use high-tech monitors as well. This implies a level of civilization with access to resources that can afford its people their choice of food and some level of technology. If they kill dragons indiscriminately and don't use them for resources, it stands to reason that these resources must come from somewhere. My money is on it being some kind of spirit particle or whatever. On the other hand, the people of Reverse London are implied to be humans from the human world who presumably have human needs, even if they live in Reverse London. Perhaps this is why there is an organized effort to control and oversee domestic dragons. Again, who can say? For now, all we have are crumbs to speculate on. And after all this, I also want to bring up the idea that maybe Bleach and Burn the Witch aren't meant to be connected in any serious or logically consistent way. Maybe it was just a fun wink and a nod at us, the fans. Maybe Burn the Witch is Kubo's attempt at leaving his behemoth of a series behind and trying something entirely new and exciting. Looking through his manga, I can confidently say that his creature designs far outclass what he did with the Hollows of Bleach. He shows himself to be able to skillfully depict both the beautiful and the grotesque in equal measure. Kubo is clearly having a lot of fun doing this, and maybe we shouldn't bust our brains looking for all the little ways in which Bleach lives on in Burn the Witch. Maybe we should just put Bleach aside and just look at this story and what it has to offer. Luckily, even after putting Bleach aside, this story does have a lot to offer. The ending also leaves the door open for plenty more to come. As Kubo ends the 4th chapter of the manga, he leaves us with several tantalizing mysteries unique to this story for us to ponder. I came into the first season of Burn the Witch expecting a nice and enjoyable snack of small-scale world building and a short story. Instead, Kubo treated me to the first course of a much more elaborate meal and then denied me the rest. At the end of the story, I was left with several burning questions. Like many of you, I am now hungering for more. I want to know so much more about this fascinating world that Kubo lets us spend a little time in. One of the first things that I would love to learn more about are the Martians, of course. Learning just their names was enough to spark my imagination. Red dress? Golden axe? Sugar house? Bubbles? What on God's green earth could Bubbles do? The one that got me the most curious was a band of animals. Why was this one dragon referred to as multiple things? Was it an animal? Could it transform into animals? Could it possess animals? Does it live with animals? Do animals live on it? I mean, dragons are pretty big. Or is it made of multiple animals, like a chimera? The next thing I'm really curious about is what the heck is up with Billy Banks Jr. He's been revealed to have a hidden agenda and is also revealed to be a secret mega badass. Just what is his agenda and why is he being so sneaky about it? Billy has also been referred to as the son of a hero. So is there something we should know about Mr. Billy Banks Sr.? Does it have something to do with the image of a knight slaying a dragon depicted in this Billy-heavy scene in the anime? This scene is exclusive to the anime, by the way, at least the painting is. Definitely getting some Urahara, Crouching Moron, hidden badass vibes here, and I'm interested to see what his deal ends up being. Moving on for now, here's another question. Just what the heck was up with that sword Balgo pulled out of nowhere? If I understood this correctly, the horn he got was like a plastic replica, right? Either way, I don't think it would have allowed him to use magic, so what was up with that sword manifesting out of nowhere? And we saw that Noelle and Nini were just as puzzled by this. We also saw that it had some sort of interesting calming effect on dragons. Osushi, the canine dragon, immediately began licking Balgo when the sword popped out, and even Cinderella stopped attacking, and in the anime you can clearly see the color of her eyes changing, which is just really intriguing to me. The mystery of exactly what this sword is. So far, one of the theories out there that I really liked was that this might be hinting at some sort of Arthurian connection for Balgo, being set in the British Isles and all. It turns out that Balgo's middle name is Yvain. Yvain? Which sounds a little Arthurian to me. Maybe it's something like Sir Gawain from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. There are also some prevailing thoughts that Balgo might be related to or connected to King Arthur himself. I personally don't really like that because I'd like Noelle and Nini to be the most important characters of the story because I love them. But that being said, if Balgo were King Arthur or one of his knights, I'd like to see it being dealt with more as a problematic power that he needs to work to master, rather than an instant power-up that makes him cooler. I like Balgo, dopey and caring as he is. His higher levels of perversion in the manga kind of put me off a little bit, but in the anime he does come off as a little bit more of a sweetheart. I would hate to see him lose his dopey persona for the sake of a power-up. At least make it timed like Nell, and give me my idiot boy back, Kubo, please. It is also revealed that Balgo came into contact with Macy before she came across Cinderella, possibly causing it to happen. This is the reason he's spared execution. It would seem that even among the Dragonclad, there is something different or interesting about Balgo, my poor idiot boy, caught up in events beyond his control and understanding. But then, that's most events. There is definitely something strange about Balgo. The story is pretty clear in telling us that he is no ordinary lovesick puppy, that's for sure. Moving on, I'd like to see different parts of the city and how people live, work, and enjoy themselves. Maybe it's the One Piece fan in me speaking, but I would really love a deeper dive into the setting, its culture, and history the next time Kubo sits down to write Burn the Witch. I also think it would be really interesting to learn about witches, wizards, wingbind, their equipment, and their power system. It also occurs to me that I'm just assuming that we're going by Bleach Kido rules, but I would love to learn something more definitive about the magic and those who are able to use it. After all, there is nothing to indicate the Reverse London is in the afterlife, or that the folk of Wingbind are dead like the Shinigami of Bleach. I'm also really keen on learning about the witch kits the members of the Wingbind have. Is it like a Zanpakuto thing, or is it something completely different? I'm starting to think that witch kit is just the name for the tools that each division uses. So far, it feels like their broom buggy or dragon mount is way more important and personal to them than their witch kit. Perhaps this is where the comparison to the Zanpakuto can be made. As I said before, I really like that the mounts are living things that the witches or wizards have to interact with. Seeing Bruno show care towards Rickenbacker was a really nice moment for me. I liked seeing a softer side to him. And last but not least, Since Wingbind is the western branch of Soul Society, I would love to see a glimpse of how it all fits together. Like, I don't need them to have a crossover episode or anything, but whatever details that are shared would be definitely welcome. Questions upon questions. I really hope that Kubo gets the opportunity to give us some more answers, and soon. The next time you put pen to paper to write this story, build that world, my guy. Build the shit out of that world, and I will be here to eat it up greedily. So far, the amount of world building this story has managed to do while still telling a short and engaging tale is nothing short of inspiring. I cannot wait for season 2 and more of this awesome story. Burn the Witch is a great story. I love the anime as much as I love the manga. I've pre-ordered the physical release of the book because I enjoyed it so much. Plus, it comes with this really awesome sleeve thing, and I just need this beauty on my shelf. I've always rooted for Kubo and thought that he got an unfair deal in the brutal machine that is Shonen Jump. So seeing him come back with such a banger of a story was really cathartic to me somehow. He hit us with awesome world building and a really interesting story. He let us get a taste of a fascinating cast of characters and a magical world I was itching to dissect. But for now, this is where the story ends. We don't have any more Burn the Witch, and I'm not really sure when we'll get more. But that's okay. The man came back recently and hit us with a doozy of a Bleach chapter, and we might be getting an extra arc out of it? Count me the fuck in! Add to that the fact that the Bleach anime is coming back with the 1000-year Blood War arc, which I am absolutely hyped for as well. It is a good time to be a Kubo fan. After watching this anime and reading this manga, I'm left with happy feelings. I really enjoyed my time with it and would love to return to it again once the story resumes. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna reread Bleach. It's been several years since I read it, and I've forgotten a lot of early Bleach and mid-Bleach and late Bleach, basically all of Bleach. So I think it'll be really fun to go back and reread it, especially since I won't be waiting for a weekly release schedule, so I can kind of see how each arc fares as a whole. I might even try reviewing the first arc and seeing if that is something you all enjoy watching. Another thought I had was that I would go back and read Kubo's older manga, Zombie Powder. It ran for 27 chapters before being cancelled and is apparently a western with magic and stuff. Might be a fun read. We'll see. All of that being said, I am going to end this video, my first video, by thanking you for watching it. I made this video largely as a passion project to talk about a really enjoyable story told by an expert. I've seen plenty of reviews and reactions, but not a lot of analyses. I'll be the first to admit that there is very little to analyze, and the conversation about Burn the Witch is hardly new. But I discovered it recently and fell in love with it, and I want to talk about it, and I'm hoping that it resonated with some of you out there. So if you stuck with this video until the end, I want to thank you. I would also love to hear what you thought about Burn the Witch, Reverse London, Wingbind, The Martians, or any of the other topics that I've discussed today. As for the future, I'm currently working on an analysis for the recent Bleach one-shot. I really enjoyed it and found it to be closer to horror than Bleach usually goes, so I'm gonna take a look at that one-shot as a Bleach horror story. I'm hoping to release it by spooky season, so do look forward to that. In the meantime, you might also see other types of content from me. I'm gonna try to hit at least one video a month because these things do take a little bit of time to research, write, record, edit, you know how it is. In the meantime, I'm Moons, and this has been the world building of Burn the Witch. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.